Picture this: the roar of 100,000 voices, a sound like a physical wave, washes over the vast expanse of the Colosseum. The sun, burning eye in the Roman sky, glints off polished bronze and freshly spilled blood on the sand below. This is not just a sporting event. It is the ultimate theater of life and death, where the agony of thousands was the greatest entertainment for millions. The year is 80 CE. Rome, the undisputed mistress of the world, dedicates its crown jewel, the Flavian Amphitheater, a monument of stone and subjugation, known to us as the Colosseum. For 100 days and nights, the city plunged into an orgy of blood and spectacle, a celebration so immense that it consumed thousands of lives and etched itself into the very soul of the Roman populace. But this was not an isolated outburst of barbarity. It was the culmination of centuries of evolving cruelty, a system meticulously crafted to control and entertain a sprawling empire. You might imagine these games as simple contests of skill, a primitive form of sport. But to truly understand ancient Rome, you must peer behind the golden facade of imperial power and witness the darkness that fueled its most beloved spectacles. The arena was not merely a venue for entertainment. It was a potent instrument of social control, a political statement, and a public reaffirmation of Roman supremacy, soaked in the blood of its victims. The concept of gladiatorial combat had its murky origins in funerary rites, where the shedding of blood was believed to honor the dead, an echo of Etruscan traditions. What began as solemn offerings evolved, over centuries, into elaborate public displays designed to appease the masses and distract them from the harsh realities of their lives. The famous phrase, panem et circenses, bread and circuses, perfectly encapsulates this strategy. Keep the populace fed and entertained, and their minds will be diverted from political grievances. Emperors and aspiring politicians understood this fundamental truth. Hosting games, or munera, was a surefire way to gain popularity, to display wealth, and to project an image of magnanimous power. The larger, the more extravagant, the more bloody the games, the greater the favor bestowed upon the patron. This created an arms race of cruelty, where each new emperor sought to outdo his predecessors in the sheer scale and ingenuity of their arena offerings. Imagine the colossal logistical network required to sustain this insatiable demand for spectacle. Across 3 continents, Rome's agents scoured conquered lands for exotic beasts: lions from Africa, bears from Gaul, tigers from the distant east, even rhinoceroses and elephants. These magnificent creatures were captured, often brutally, transported across vast distances in cramped cages, and starved, all so they could be released into the arena, disoriented and enraged, to face down human combatants. The acquisition of human lives was equally systematic, though perhaps less exotic. Slaves, prisoners of war, condemned criminals, and even some desperate free men who volunteered for the meager pay and fleeting chance at glory were funneled into a grim pipeline that led directly to the sand. These were individuals stripped of their identity, reduced to mere instruments of entertainment, their lives valued only for the spectacle their deaths could provide. The Roman system perfected the dehumanization of its victims, transforming men and women into disposable pawns in a gruesome game. From the grand imperial games lasting for weeks, consuming thousands of lives, to the smaller local contests held in amphitheaters across the empire, the arena was a constant, brutal presence in Roman life. It shaped their culture, desensitized their populace to unimaginable cruelty, and served as a chilling mirror reflecting the empire's power and its profound disregard for human dignity. It was a place where life was cheap and death was celebrated, where every scream was a cheer, and every drop of blood was another stroke in the portrait of Rome's unyielding might. The very foundations of Roman society, its architecture, its politics, its daily rhythms, were interwoven with the fabric of these deadly games. To dismiss them as mere barbaric entertainment is to miss the deeper, darker truth. They were a deliberate, calculated expression of absolute power, a theatrical manifestation of an empire that thrived on conquest and subjugation, both within its borders and beyond. At the heart of Rome's brutal theater were the gladiators, men who lived and died by the sword, their existence a fleeting dance between spectacular violence and anonymous oblivion. These were not always willing combatants. Many were slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals, their lives forfeited to the arena's insatiable hunger for blood. Yet, among them, a strange hierarchy emerged, a grim professionalism that transformed desperate men into revered, albeit expendable, celebrities. You might hear tales of noble warriors fighting with honor. Forget them. The reality was a brutal, calculated system designed to extract maximum entertainment from human suffering. Imagine a life lived in the ludus, a gladiator school where discipline was absolute and brutal. Training was relentless, conducted by lanistae, former gladiators or grizzled veterans, whose methods ensured peak physical condition, but more importantly, instilled absolute obedience and the precise techniques of killing. Their diets were carefully managed, rich in barley and beans, earning them the nickname hordiarii, barley eaters. Medical care was surprisingly advanced, not out of compassion, but to keep these valuable assets alive and fit for future bouts. These men were investments, commodities whose value was measured in their ability to draw crowds and spill blood. The gladiators were categorized by their weaponry, their armor, and their fighting styles, each pairing designed for a dramatic contrast. The heavy-hitting Murmillo, with his fish-crested helmet, large rectangular shield, and short sword, often faced the agile Thraex, who carried a small square shield and a curved sword. Or perhaps the enigmatic Retiarius, armed only with a trident, a dagger, and a net, who danced around the heavily armored Secutor, a fighter designed specifically to counter the netman. Each combat was a carefully choreographed duel, a clash of styles and temperaments, culminating in the moment of truth, the missio, or the jugula. The crowd, a vast roaring entity, held the power of life and death in their hands. A fallen gladiator, if he had fought bravely, might appeal for mercy, raising a finger to the crowd. The editor, the organizer of the games, would then defer to the will of the masses. A thumbs up, police verso, meant life, a reprieve to fight another day, perhaps even earn his freedom. A thumbs down, or a gesture signifying the sword thrust, meant jugula, kill him. The execution was swift, often a dagger plunged into the neck, a final brutal affirmation of the crowd's dominion. But the gladiatorial life was not just about the fighting. It was a complex social phenomenon. Gladiators, despite their enslaved status, were paradoxically objects of immense fascination, even desire. Their courage, their raw masculinity, their proximity to death made them irresistible to many Roman women. Graffiti, poems, and even expensive jewelry celebrated their triumphs, and mourned their deaths. Yet, beneath this veneer of celebrity lay the undeniable truth of their existence. They were slaves, owned by laniste, bought and sold, their bodies instruments of public spectacle. The psychological toll must have been immense. Every day brought the chilling prospect of facing a trained killer, of feeling the bite of a sword, of hearing the roar of a crowd demanding your death. Some men fought with desperation, others with grim resignation, and a rare few with an almost defiant joy in their prowess. The arena was a crucible that forged men into something else entirely, often breaking them in the process. We know of gladiators like Spiculus, who famously refused to be killed after Nero's death, choosing suicide instead. Or the legendary Spartacus, who led a massive slave revolt, igniting a brief, terrifying rebellion against the very system that created him. These stories, though rare, hint at the immense pressure and profound injustice simmering beneath the surface of the arena's blood-soaked sand. The gladiatorial games were more than just entertainment. They were a profound psychological experiment on a societal scale, demonstrating the Roman capacity to glorify systematic violence, to find beauty in brutality, and to build an entire cultural edifice upon the deliberate dehumanization of its most unfortunate citizens. The enduring image of the gladiator stands as a stark testament to Rome's complex, contradictory soul, a civilization capable of unparalleled engineering and philosophical depth, yet also capable of unimaginable cruelty, all for the roar of the crowd. But Rome's insatiable appetite for death extended far beyond the gladiatorial contests, beyond the clash of steel on bronze, into a realm even more primal, more terrifying. The beast hunts, or venationes, and the condemnations to wild animals, damnatio ad bestias, were spectacles designed not just to entertain, but to hammer home Rome's absolute dominion, not merely over conquered peoples, but over nature itself, over the very untamed spirit of the world. Picture this: the vast, echoing silence of the arena just before the gates creak open, broken only by the nervous shuffle of thousands of feet and the distant guttural roars rumbling up from beneath the sand. Imagine the horror etched onto the face of an unarmed man, often a convicted criminal, a runaway slave, or a perceived enemy of the state, thrust into that pitiless sand. He stands there, naked, vulnerable, his heart hammering against his ribs, knowing that his naked flesh is all that stands between him and the primeval fury about to be unleashed. A roaring lion, a charging bear, the coiled menace of a viper, or the slithering armored death of a crocodile. This was no contest of skill, no fair fight with a chance of survival. This was a premeditated, public execution, meticulously choreographed to be as agonizing, as humiliating, and as soul-crushing as possible. The very ground of the arena, so seemingly solid, concealed a nightmarish secret: the hypogeum, a labyrinthine network of cages, ramps, and pulleys that stretched deep beneath the Colosseum. From this shadowy underworld, wild animals could be raised directly onto the sand, bursting forth from trapdoors with a sudden thunderous impact, as if the earth itself had disgorged monsters. This theatrical element was crucial, a masterstroke of psychological terror, designed to maximize surprise and amplify the primal fear of the unknown. The crowd gasped, then roared, as a creature of pure instinct materialized as if by magic, an instant instrument of Rome's brutal will. Thousands upon thousands of animals were sacrificed to this brutal appetite. their lives a mere footnote in the annals of Roman spectacle. Lions from Africa, panthers from Asia Minor, bears from the cold forests of Dacia, wild boars, wolves, stags, even more exotic creatures like rhinoceroses from distant plains, hippopotamuses from the Nile, and towering elephants were hunted down, captured, and dragged across vast distances to Rome. The logistics involved were staggering, a testament to Roman engineering and organizational prowess, but also a stark indicator of their profound disregard for animal welfare and the delicate ecosystems from which these magnificent creatures were violently extracted. Many died during the brutal journey, others from mistreatment in the cramped, filthy holding pens beneath the arena, only to be replaced by more, an unending conveyor belt of living sacrifices. The sheer scale of this slaughter is difficult for the modern mind to comprehend. During a single festival celebrating his Dacian victories, Emperor Trajan reportedly orchestrated the deaths of 11,000 animals over 123 days. This wasn't merely a display of hunting skill. It was a grand, bloody exhibition of Rome's power to bend the natural world to its will, to bring the savage wilderness of distant lands into the very heart of the city, and then to utterly dominate it, to break its spirit and spill its blood for the roaring amusement of the masses. The selection of animals often carried symbolic weight. A panther might represent exoticism, a lion, raw power, and an elephant, the might of conquest. Their eventual death in the arena reaffirmed Roman supremacy overall. The venaciones were elaborate spectacles where professional hunters, known as venatores, showcased their courage and skill. These men, much like gladiators, were trained to fight and kill specific beasts, often engaging in intricate mock hunts within the arena. Artificial landscapes, complete with trees, rocks, and even small pools of water, transformed the sand into a semblance of a natural hunting ground, creating a thrilling illusion of danger that was, for the venatores, very real. They were armed, skilled, and at least had a fighting chance. But the damnatio ad bestias was a different, far more gruesome affair, stripped of any pretense of a fair contest. Here, the victims were condemned individuals, murderers, traitors, runaway slaves, and, famously, early Christians. They were paraded before the jeering crowds, their faces often contorted with terror or resignation. Stripped naked, sometimes tied to stakes to ensure they could not flee or fight back effectively, sometimes even sewn into animal skins to further enrage the predators and add a layer of horrific irony, they faced certain excruciating death. The crowd reveled in the raw terror of the condemned, the desperate, futile struggles against overwhelming savage force. Each scream was a note in a bloody symphony, each tearing of flesh a moment of ecstatic brutality for those safely observing from the stands. For the early Christians, this particular form of execution held a chilling, profound significance. Roman authorities, viewing their steadfast refusal to worship the imperial gods as a political act of rebellion, an act of atheism against the state religion, often condemned them to the beasts. It was a public humiliation designed to break their spirit and serve as a dire warning to others who might dare to defy the established order. Yet, something unexpected often happened. The image of the Christian martyr in the arena, facing a snarling lion with serene defiance, perhaps even singing hymns or praying, became a powerful, albeit horrifying symbol for the nascent church. It transformed their suffering into a testament of faith, a spiritual victory in the face of physical annihilation. For the Roman populace, however, hardened and desensitized, it was just another show, Another display of imperial justice. Another spectacle to slake their thirst for blood and drama. The screams of the dying, the guttural roars of the beasts, the coppery smell of freshly spilled blood mingling with the tang of fear and excrement. These were the intoxicating visceral elements of a spectacle designed not just to entertain, but to desensitize, to control, and to reinforce the absolute, unquestionable power of the Roman state. It was a sensory assault, an overwhelming experience crafted to manipulate the emotions of the crowd, making them complicit in the barbarity, binding them to the emperor's will through shared bloody thrills. This systematic brutality extended even to the most vulnerable. There are harrowing accounts of young boys and girls condemned alongside their parents for their family's perceived crimes or faith, cast into the arena to face the same ravenous jaws. These children, stripped of innocence and life, became mere props in Rome's grand theater of power. The Roman mind, in its ruthless pursuit of order, political stability, and public entertainment, had developed a terrifying capacity to view human life, especially that of the condemned, as utterly expendable, a resource to be consumed for the pleasure and political stability of the empire. What does it say about a civilization that could applaud the dismemberment of a child? The damnatio ad bestias was more than an execution. It was a stark, bloody reminder of who held power in Rome, and the terrifying, inescapable consequences for those who dared to defy it. It was primal fear, raw and visceral, carefully weaponized and delivered as entertainment. This particular institution, perhaps more than any other, exposed the dark underbelly of Roman society, leaving a trail of blood and shattered lives that stains the very foundation of this otherwise magnificent civilization, a perpetual testament to humanity's capacity for cruelty under the guise of spectacle and justice. The Naumachia, aquatic annihilation picture. This. The roar isn't for a charging lion or a gladiator's triumphant blow. This sound is different, deeper, more primal. The thunderous rush of water as the very earth beneath the Colosseum floor dissolves into a churning, shimmering inland sea. You think you understand Roman spectacles, the blood and sand of the arena. But ancient Rome, in its boundless capacity for engineered brutality, conceived of something far more astonishing, far more inhumane: the Naumachia, or staged naval battles. What you are about to witness is the ultimate demonstration of imperial might, transforming not just men into instruments of death, but entire landscapes into stages for mass execution. These were no mere simulations. Forget scaled-down models or theatrical props. We are talking about full-scale, catastrophic reenactments of historical naval engagements, with real warships, real weapons, and thousands of combatants, often condemned prisoners, fighting to the death in a watery grave. The Colosseum, that iconic arena, with its vast underground network of passages and lifts, could be flooded and emptied, reportedly within hours, transforming from a desert of sand into a temporary lake deep enough for galleys to maneuver. Imagine the logistical nightmare: the labyrinthine system of aqueducts diverting rivers, the complex drains, all orchestrated with a precision that makes modern engineering marvels seem clumsy by comparison. It was a testament to Rome's unparalleled ingenuity, yes, but also a horrifying monument to their absolute mastery over nature and human life, turning solid ground into a battlefield of water for the fleeting pleasure of the Roman crowd. But even the immense Colosseum often proved insufficient for the emperor's most grandiose visions. The greatest Naumachia known to history wasn't held in the heart of Rome at all, but some 60 miles east. In 52 CE, Emperor Claudius, a man often underestimated, orchestrated a spectacle on the Fucine Lake, a natural body of water whose very existence he dared to reshape. This wasn't a matter of simply flooding an arena. This was an 11-year project involving the forced labor of tens of thousands of slaves, digging miles of canals and tunnels to partially drain and prepare the massive lake. Behind the golden facade of Roman engineering lay the darkness of countless human backs bent under the sun, lives sacrificed in the arduous task of altering Italy's natural landscape for a single, bloody performance. The scale was staggering. Claudius's Naumachia involved 19,000 combatants, sailing in 100 massive galleys, recreating a legendary battle between the fleets of Rhodes and Sicily. These weren't professional soldiers or even skilled sailors. These were the Naumachiarii, condemned prisoners, often slaves, political enemies, or prisoners of war, whose lives were deemed utterly forfeit. They were procured from across the vast empire, systematically rounded up and processed like chattel. They received no true naval training, no lessons in strategy or seamanship. Instead, they were given rudimentary weapons and thrown onto these warships, instruments of death forced to fight with a suicidal desperation. They knew their only escape from this watery hell was through killing or being killed, a macabre choice in a predetermined fate. The spectacle itself was designed to be as realistic and bloody as possible. Ships were equipped with formidable rams, catapults that hurled stones and fire, and grappling hooks to snare enemy vessels, just like real warships in a genuine engagement. As the signal was given, the vast expanse of the Fucine Lake erupted into a chaotic melee. The deafening clang of clashing oars, the splintering wood of hulls tearing apart, the whistling of arrows and spears through the air, and the desperate, guttural screams of thousands of men fighting for their lives filled the air. The water, initially pristine, would quickly turn crimson, a gruesome tableau of carnage unfolding before the cheering throngs of Roman nobility and plebeians alike. For the Roman audience, it was an unparalleled display of imperial might, demonstrating not only Rome's ability to command armies and fleets, but also its almost divine mastery over nature itself, turning liquid into a stage for their unquenchable thirst for blood. It was a tangible manifestation of their boundless resources and their absolute, unquestionable power over human life. These Naumachii were incredibly expensive to stage, requiring immense investment in shipbuilding, personnel, infrastructure, and the systematic procurement of thousands of human lives, all for events that lasted only a single day or a few hours. Yet, the emperors considered them entirely worthwhile. They served as potent propaganda, reinforcing the image of an invincible empire, a civilization capable of achieving anything, even recreating the very seas for its entertainment. They proclaimed to the world that Rome bowed to no limits, either natural or human. But beneath the thunderous applause, beneath the dazzling pageantry and the awe-inspiring engineering, lay the horrifying, unflinching reality. These were mass executions, disguised as historical reenactments. Thousands of human lives were consumed in a single, brutal performance, sacrificed not for honor or conquest, but for nothing more than public amusement, a chilling testament to Rome's capacity for orchestrated inhumanity. The Naumachii stand as perhaps the most extreme example of Rome's brutal ingenuity, a monument to their architectural genius and their profound, almost unimaginable capacity for cruelty. They proved that for Rome, the grandest spectacle always demanded the greatest, most barbaric sacrifice. You think you understand the Roman arena, the clash of gladiatorial steel, the roar of the crowd, the magnificent beasts. But beneath the thunderous applause and the dust of noble combat lay a darkness so profound, so utterly dehumanizing, that it makes the famous duels seem almost merciful by comparison. These were the arena's hidden horrors, the footnotes in the annals of brutality, designed not for valor, but for sheer terror, to reinforce the absolute, unchallengeable power of the emperor and the state. The empire's imagination for cruelty, it turns out, stretched far wider and deeper than most dare to imagine, meticulously crafting death into a performance of unprecedented sadism. Consider the terrifying simplicity of the condemnation, ad ludos, to the games. This was no promise of a glorious, potentially redemptive fight, like that of a trained gladiator, whose life had some value. Number. This was a sentence of public ignominious death for the common criminal, the slave, the political prisoner, or often simply those unlucky enough to be caught in the dragnet of Roman justice. Picture the individual, often emaciated and bewildered, dragged into the blinding sunlight of the arena, his limbs bound, his heart pounding. He might have been a minor thief, a runaway slave, or a provincial rebel whose only crime was defying Rome. Given a dull sword, a flimsy shield, perhaps even a rotten stick, he was then shoved onto the blood-soaked sand, expected to face a fully armored, professional gladiator, a killing machine whose every move was honed by years of training, or worse, a mob of equally terrified, ill-equipped wretches in a chaotic, suicidal melee. It was mass execution disguised as sport, a cheap, brutal way to provide bodies, ensuring a steady, anonymous stream of blood without costly training. The fear in their eyes, the desperate, unpracticed flailing, the swift, brutal end, these were the spectacles for the masses, a chilling lesson in the empire's contempt for lives deemed worthless, a silent scream swallowed by the roar of the crowd. The Roman concept of justice, you see, was often intertwined with public spectacle, blurring the lines between punishment and entertainment. While crucifixion typically stained the hills outside the city walls, its agonizing tableau sometimes found its way into the arena's pre-show, a horrifying prelude to the main events. No quick death, but a lingering public dissolution of body and spirit, a sickening reminder of Rome's power to inflict suffering. Imagine the sheer, drawn-out agony, victims nailed or bound to crosses, slowly suffocating over hours, sometimes days, their contorted bodies forming a grim, living backdrop as eager crowds gathered, munching on snacks, anticipating the real entertainment to come. The sun would beat down, the flies would swarm, and the victims would twist and writhe, their suffering an appetizer for the blood sport to follow. Sometimes, a mercy blow from a spear would finally end the torment, but only after the crowd had sufficiently imbibed the lesson in absolute dominion. It was a spectacle of ultimate degradation, a message etched in flesh and bone for all to see. Then there were the comedic deaths, a chilling testament to Rome's desensitization to suffering, where mythology itself became a script for murder. Criminals were not merely killed, they were forced to play out tragic, mythological roles, their genuine terror and agonizing deaths becoming the punchline for a bloodthirsty audience. A condemned man might be dressed as Icarus, given flimsy waxen wings, only to be thrown from a dizzying height, perhaps from a specially constructed tower, or a retractable platform hundreds of feet above the sand, to his actual, bone-shattering death. The illusion of flight, the sudden, terrible reality of gravity, all for the roar of the crowd's perverse amusement. Another, perhaps, dressed as the mighty Hercules, might be bound to a pyre and burned alive, mimicking the hero's tragic end with real screams and burning flesh, the smell of which mingled with the perfumes and roasted meats of the privileged spectators. Or consider Orpheus, forced to sing his last, while wild beasts, bears or leopards, tore him limb from limb, the performance ending not in applause for his music, but in silence for his demise. His body a shredded testament to Rome's contempt for beauty and life. These were not plays. They were literally deadly reenactments, designed to extract genuine terror and death for the audience's perverse amusement, erasing the distinction between theatrical drama and real-life atrocity. The meticulous planning involved in these executions reveals a terrifying ingenuity, a cold, calculating brilliance applied to the science of death. Roman engineers and technicians, the same minds that built aqueducts and towering arches, were tasked not just with impressive architectural feats, but with devising elaborate mechanisms of death beneath the arena floor. The Colosseum, for instance, was a marvel of destructive engineering. Hidden trapdoors, suddenly snapping open, would plunge victims into unseen pits or directly into the waiting jaws of ravenous beasts starved for the occasion. Complex pulley systems, operated by dozens of slaves deep in the hypogeum, allowed victims to be dramatically snatched skyward, suspended agonizingly, only to be dropped from impossible heights or dragged across the sand into preset hazards like sharpened stakes or hungry animals. Ingenious stagecraft transformed the arena floor itself, manipulating it to create new and terrifying scenarios for the condemned. Artificial landscapes of rocky outcrops, dense thickets, or murky pools where victims were hunted like game. Illusions amplified their terror, perhaps creating mirages of escape that quickly turned into new forms of torture. Every aspect was designed for maximum dramatic effect, ensuring the spectacle of suffering was visually impactful, often choreographed to produce climactic, bloody conclusions that delighted the crowds. The psychological impact on Roman society cannot be overstated. Generations grew up witnessing daily acts of extreme violence, celebrating suffering, and becoming utterly desensitized to human agony. This constant exposure to brutality shaped the Roman psyche, normalizing violence as entertainment and social control. It fostered a culture where compassion was viewed as weakness, cruelty as strength, and the suffering of others not just acceptable, but celebrated. Children, raised on these spectacles, would reenact brutal games in the streets, mirroring the callousness they absorbed from their elders. The line between entertainment and execution blurred so completely that the sheer inventiveness of death became an art form. The Roman arena, therefore, was not merely a site of isolated acts of inhumanity. It was a factory of cruelty, a meticulously designed system for the mass production of terror and death, a grand theater where the human soul was systematically stripped away, both from the victims and, perhaps more chillingly, from the audience. It served the political, social, and psychological needs of one of history's most powerful empires, crafting a legacy of fear and blood. From the grandest naumachii to the anonymous death of a common criminal, every act in the arena served as a potent, bloody reminder of Rome's absolute dominion, a chilling echo that still resonates across the centuries. The Colosseum, now a silent, crumbling giant, stands as a testament to both the architectural genius and the profound moral failings of ancient Rome. For centuries, its sands were soaked with the blood of thousands, its air filled with the roars of beasts and the screams of the dying, all for the entertainment and political gratification of a vast empire. We have stripped away the romantic myths and peered into the chilling reality of its most brutal acts, witnessing the systematic dehumanization, the engineered terror, and the casual cruelty that formed the bedrock of its spectacle. You have journeyed through the gladiatorial schools, where men were trained as instruments of death, witnessed the harrowing damnatio ad bestias, where humans faced ravenous beasts, and marveled at the terrifying scale of the naumachii, where entire fleets clashed in artificial lakes of blood. You have seen how Rome, in its quest for absolute power and societal control, blurred the lines between justice and atrocity, between entertainment and execution, creating a culture where human life was a disposable commodity. The methods may have changed, but the underlying mechanisms of dehumanization, of using spectacle to control, and of sacrificing individual lives for collective gratification are timeless warnings. The echoes of those ancient screams, though faint, serve as an eternal reminder of humanity's capacity for both unparalleled creation and unimaginable destruction. They whisper of a dark truth, that the true measure of a civilization lies not in the height of its monuments, but in the depth of its compassion and its unwavering commitment to the dignity of every single human life. If this journey into ancient Rome's darkest corners has captivated you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history's most compelling and often unsettling stories. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What aspect of Rome's arena culture do you find most shocking? Thank you for joining us on this unflinching exploration of ancient Rome's most brutal arena acts. May the stories of those who suffered there remind us of the enduring importance of empathy and the constant vigilance required to protect human dignity. Until next time, keep exploring the past, for it holds invaluable lessons for our present.